The big house on Maple Street was shining bright that Saturday evening. Every window glowed with warm yellow light. Cars pulled up one after another in the long driveway. Expensive cars. Black ones, silver ones. Some so shiny they looked like mirrors on wheels. Men in dark suits stepped out. Women in long dresses that sparkled like stars followed them. Inside the Morrison mansion, everything looked perfect. Crystal lights hung from the ceiling, throwing tiny rainbows across the white walls. Fresh flowers sat in tall vases on every table. White roses, pink lilies, and purple orchids filled the air with sweet smells. The floor was so clean and shiny that people could see their reflections when they looked down. This was Victoria Morrison's night. Her big charity party happened every year, and everyone who was anyone in the city wanted to be there. Victoria had spent weeks planning every detail. She wanted everything to be perfect. She wanted people to talk about this party for months. Victoria stood near the entrance, greeting her guests. She wore a red dress that cost more than most people earned in 3 months. Diamonds hung around her neck and sparkled on her fingers. Her blonde hair was pulled back tight, not a single strand out of place. She smiled at each guest, but her eyes stayed cold and watchful. "Darling, how wonderful to see you," she said to a woman in a blue gown. "That dress is lovely. Is it new?" "Thank you, Victoria," the woman replied. "You look stunning as always." Victoria's smile grew wider. This was what she lived for. The compliments, the admiration, the way people looked at her like she was someone important. And she was important, wasn't she? She had married Richard Morrison 10 years ago. Richard came from old money. His family had been rich for generations. Their name meant something in this city. Richard himself stood across the room talking to other businessmen. He was a tall man with gray hair and a tired face. He looked older than his 50 years. Right now he was nodding at something another man was saying, but his mind seemed far away. It usually was during these parties. The ballroom was filling up quickly. Nearly 100 people would be here tonight. Lawyers, doctors, business owners, politicians, all of them dressed in their finest clothes. All of them smiling and laughing and pretending to care about the charity that Victoria claimed to support. Most of them couldn't even remember which charity it was. Music played softly from speakers hidden in the walls. Classical music, the kind that rich people thought they should like. Waiters in white jackets moved through the crowd carrying trays of champagne and tiny foods. Little pieces of fish on crackers, cheese cubes with toothpicks, shrimp that cost $5 each. In the corner of the ballroom stood a grand piano. It was huge and black and polished until it gleamed. The Morrison family had owned it for years, but nobody really played it anymore. Sometimes Victoria hired a pianist for her parties, but not tonight. Tonight it just sat there, looking expensive and important like everything else in the house. Near the piano, almost invisible in the crowd, Elena Rodriguez moved quietly between the guests. She wore a simple black dress with a white apron. Her dark hair was pulled back in a neat bun. She carried a tray, picking up empty glasses that people left on tables and windowsills. Elena was 32 years old, though she looked younger. She had kind brown eyes and a gentle face. She moved carefully, always watching where she stepped, always trying not to disturb anyone. She had learned how to be invisible. That was part of her job. She had worked for the Morrison family for 3 years now. 3 long years of cleaning and serving and staying quiet. She worked 6 days a week, sometimes 7 when they had parties like this one. She cleaned the bathrooms and made the beds and did the laundry. She cooked meals when the regular cook was off. She did whatever Victoria told her to do. The pay was okay. Not great, but okay. Elena sent most of it back home to her mother and younger sister in their home country. They needed it more than she did. Elena lived in a small room on the 3rd floor of the mansion. It had a bed, a dresser, and one window that looked out over the back garden. That was enough for her. Tonight, like at every party, Elena became even more invisible than usual. She was just the help, just the maid. People looked through her like she was made of glass. When they needed something, they snapped their fingers or held out their empty glasses without even looking at her face. Elena didn't mind too much anymore. She had learned not to mind. This was just how things were. Rich people lived in one world. People like her lived in another. Those worlds touched but never mixed. She did her work, collected her pay, and survived. That was enough. But it hadn't always been this way. Years ago, in another country and another life, Elena had been different. She had been a music student, a pianist. She had studied at a conservatory, a special school for musicians. She had practiced 6 hours every day, her fingers flying over piano keys, learning pieces by Mozart and Chopin and Beethoven. She had been good. Really good. Her teachers had said she had a gift. Elena had dreamed of being a concert pianist. She had imagined herself on stage wearing a beautiful gown, playing for hundreds of people. She had imagined the applause, the flowers, the joy of sharing music with the world. Those had been good dreams. Happy dreams. But then everything had changed. Her father had gotten sick. Cancer. The treatments cost more money than the family had. They sold everything. The car, the furniture, her mother's jewelry. It still wasn't enough. The bills kept coming and coming like a flood they couldn't stop. Then her father died anyway. After that, there was no money for the conservatory. No money for anything. Elena's mother couldn't pay the rent on their apartment. They were going to end up on the street. So Elena had made a choice. She had left school. She had left her music behind. She had come to this country to work and send money home. That was 8 years ago. 8 years since she had really played piano. Oh, she had touched piano keys a few times, in stores sometimes or in hotel lobbies. Just a few notes before someone told her to stop. But she hadn't really played. Hadn't lost herself in music the way she used to. The way that made her feel alive and whole and like herself, she missed it. God, she missed it. Sometimes late at night in her small room, she would close her eyes and move her fingers in the air, pretending to play. She could hear the music in her head, could feel the keys under her fingers even though they weren't there. Those were the only moments when she felt like her old self. Like Elena the musician, not Elena the maid, but she never told anyone about this. What was the point? The past was past. This was her life now. She had made her peace with it, or at least that's what she told herself. Now she moved through the Morrison ballroom, collecting glasses and plates, invisible and unnoticed. She heard fragments of conversation as she passed. Did you see what Margaret was wearing? That dress must have cost a fortune. My son just got accepted to Harvard. We're so proud. We're thinking of buying a villa in Italy. Just a little place for summers. Elena's feet hurt. She had been standing for 4 hours already. The party had started at 6 and it was past 10 now. It would probably go until midnight or later. Then she would have to clean everything up. She wouldn't get to bed until 2 or 3 in the morning. And Victoria would probably want her up at 7 to make breakfast. She pushed the tiredness away. Just keep moving. Just get through it. Elena picked up 3 empty champagne glasses from a side table and turned toward the kitchen. As she moved, she bumped lightly into someone. Champagne from one of the glasses sloshed onto her apron. "Oh, I'm so sorry," Elena said quickly, looking up. It was Victoria. Victoria's cold eyes looked down at the wet spot on Elena's apron. Her mouth pressed into a thin line. "Be more careful," she said sharply. "You're making a mess." "Yes, Mrs. Morrison, I'm very sorry." Victoria's eyes swept over Elena like she was inspecting a piece of furniture for dust. Then she turned away without another word and walked back to her guests. Elena let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. She hurried toward the kitchen with her tray of glasses. The kitchen was hot and busy. 2 other staff members worked there tonight. Carlos, who did yard work and helped with heavy lifting at parties, and Mrs. Chen, an older woman who did most of the cooking for the Morrisons. "How is it out there?" Mrs. Chen asked, wiping sweat from her forehead. "Busy," Elena said. "They're drinking a lot tonight." "They always do at these parties," Carlos said with a laugh. "Rich people love their champagne." Elena smiled a little and loaded her empty glasses into the dishwasher. She grabbed a clean tray and filled it with fresh champagne glasses from the refrigerator. Time to go back out. As she pushed through the kitchen door, she heard Victoria's voice rising above the crowd. Victoria was getting louder as the night went on. She always did. The more champagne she drank, the louder and bolder she became. Elena had seen it before. Victoria became mean when she drank. She made jokes that weren't really jokes. She said things that hurt people but laughed like it was all in fun. The other guests would laugh too, uncomfortable but not wanting to offend their hostess. Elena moved along the edge of the room, offering champagne to anyone who looked like they wanted more. Most people took a glass without even glancing at her. One older man said thank you, which surprised her. Not many of them remembered their manners with the help. She was heading back toward the kitchen when she heard it. "Ladies and gentlemen." Victoria's voice cut through the music and conversation. People turned to look at her. She stood in the center of the room, holding a champagne glass high in the air. Her face was flushed pink. Her eyes were bright and hard. "Ladies and gentlemen, I have something special for you tonight." The room grew quieter. People loved when Victoria did something unexpected at her parties. Last year, she had hired opera singers who burst out of a giant cake. The year before that, she had a magician who made a real tiger appear on the back patio. What would it be this time? Elena started to back toward the wall, wanting to stay out of the way. But then Victoria's eyes found her, and Victoria smiled. It was not a kind smile. "Elena," Victoria called out. "Elena, dear, come here." Elena's heart dropped into her stomach. "No, please no." She knew that tone. That smile. Nothing good ever came from that smile. But she couldn't refuse. Not in front of all these people. Not if she wanted to keep her job. Slowly, Elena set down her tray on a nearby table. She walked toward Victoria on legs that felt like wood. Every eye in the room followed her. "Everyone," Victoria said, her voice loud and bright. "This is Elena. She's been with us for 3 years now. Working so hard. Such a dedicated employee." Elena stood there, her hands clasped in front of her, her eyes on the floor. Her face burned with embarrassment. Why was Victoria doing this? What did she want? "I was just thinking," Victoria continued, "that Elena deserves a little treat, a chance to experience how the other half lives. Don't you think?" Some people in the crowd nodded. Others looked confused. A few looked uncomfortable, like they could sense something mean was coming. Victoria turned and gestured toward the grand piano in the corner. "Elena, darling, why don't you play something for us? Give our guests a little performance?" The room went very quiet. Elena's head snapped up. She looked at Victoria, then at the piano, then back at Victoria. "Mrs. Morrison, I don't think—" "Oh, come now," Victoria said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "Don't be shy. I'm sure you must know something. Everyone knows at least one song, right? Maybe Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star?" A few people laughed. Not big laughs. Nervous little giggles. Elena felt her face get even hotter. She shook her head. "I really should get back to work. There are still glasses to collect and—" "I insist," Victoria said. The sweetness was gone from her voice now. It was an order, not a request. "Just one little song for fun." "It'll be amusing." Elena looked around the room, all these rich people in their expensive clothes staring at her. Some looked curious. Some looked amused. Some looked away, embarrassed for her. But none of them said anything. None of them told Victoria to stop. Elena's chest felt tight. She couldn't breathe right. This was humiliation. Pure humiliation. Victoria wanted to watch her fail. Wanted to watch her stumble through Chopsticks or some other simple song while everyone laughed. Wanted to remind her that she was just the maid. Just the help. Someone to laugh at. Something hot and angry flickered in Elena's chest. For 3 years she had been invisible. For 3 years she had stayed quiet and small. She had swallowed every insult, every dismissive wave, every moment of being treated like she didn't matter. But before she was a maid, she had been a pianist. And she was still that person. Deep down, underneath the uniform and the tired feet and the years of silence, she was still Elena the musician. That Elena wouldn't run away. Elena took a slow, deep breath. She raised her head and looked Victoria straight in the eye. "All right," she said quietly. "I'll play." Victoria's smile grew wider. She thought she had won. The crowd parted as Elena walked toward the piano. Her heart was pounding so hard she thought everyone could hear it. Her hands were shaking. But she kept walking. She reached the piano bench and sat down. The seat felt familiar even after all these years. She adjusted her position the way she had been taught. Straight back. Arms relaxed. Feet flat on the floor. She looked at the keys. Black and white, perfectly arranged. Waiting. For a moment, doubt crashed over her. What if she couldn't do it anymore? What if 8 years away from music had stolen her gift? What if she sat down and her fingers didn't remember? What if Victoria was right to laugh at her? But then she closed her eyes. And she remembered. She remembered being 15 years old in the conservatory, playing for the first time in front of judges. She remembered being 20, performing at her first recital. She remembered the feeling of music flowing through her like water, like light, like something holy and pure. She remembered who she really was. Elena opened her eyes. She placed her fingers on the keys. and she began to play. The first notes came out soft and gentle, just a few simple sounds that floated into the air like butterflies. Elena's fingers moved slowly at first, touching the keys with care, finding them again after so long, getting to know them once more. The crowd watched in silence. Some people had their phones out already, ready to record the maid making a fool of herself. Others held their champagne glasses and waited for the entertainment to begin. Victoria stood with her arms crossed, that mean smile still on her face. But something was different. The notes Elena played weren't random. They weren't clumsy. They formed a melody, a real melody. Beautiful and clear. Elena's fingers began to move faster. More confident now. They remembered. After 8 years of silence, they still remembered. It was like riding a bicycle or swimming. Once learned, never forgotten. The music was still inside her, waiting all this time to come out. She was playing Rachmaninoff. Piano Concerto No. 2. One of the hardest pieces ever written for piano. A piece that took years to master. A piece that could make professional pianists nervous. The gentle opening bloomed into something bigger. Elena's right hand danced across the high keys while her left hand provided deep, rich bass notes. The two hands worked together like they were having a conversation. Question and answer, call and response. The sound filled the ballroom. It was nothing like the recorded music that had been playing earlier. This was alive, real, human. Every note had feeling in it. Every chord told a story. People in the crowd began to shift. Straightened up. Paid attention. This wasn't what they expected. This wasn't some simple song played badly. This was real music. Professional music. A woman near the front gasped softly. She was a music teacher and recognized the piece immediately. She knew how hard it was. She looked at Elena with wide eyes, unable to believe what she was hearing. Elena barely noticed. She was lost now. Lost in the music the way she used to get lost 8 years ago. The ballroom disappeared. The people disappeared. Even Victoria disappeared. There was only the piano and the music and her. Her fingers flew across the keys. Fast passages that sounded like running water. Slow passages that sounded like someone crying. Loud, powerful chords that shook the air. Soft, delicate notes that you had to lean forward to hear. The music told a story. It spoke of love and loss. Of dreams and disappointment. Of hope dying and being born again. It was the story of a life. Maybe Rachmaninoff's life when he wrote it. Maybe Elena's life now. Maybe everyone's life if they listened close enough. Victoria's smile had disappeared. Her mouth hung open slightly. She looked confused and angry at the same time. This wasn't supposed to happen. The maid was supposed to struggle through Mary Had a Little Lamb. She was supposed to hit wrong notes and get embarrassed and run away while everyone laughed. This wasn't the plan, but there was nothing Victoria could do now. She couldn't stop Elena in the middle of the piece. Not with everyone watching and listening. Not when the music was this good. So she just stood there, her face getting redder and redder, her hands clenching into fists. Elena's body swayed as she played. Her shoulders moved with the music. Her face showed everything she felt. Pain on the sad parts, joy on the happy parts, peace on the quiet parts. She wasn't just playing the notes on the page. She was living them. More people in the crowd began to understand what they were hearing. The music professor put his hand over his heart. A wealthy businessman who had studied piano as a child felt tears come to his eyes. A young woman who had never cared much about classical music found herself completely caught up in the sound. The piece moved into its most famous section. The part that everyone knows, even if they don't know they know it. It's been in movies and commercials and ice skating competitions. The melody soared up and up, full of longing and beauty and heartbreak. Elena played it with her whole soul. This was the music she had loved since she was a girl. The music she had given up. The music she thought she would never play again. And now here it was, flowing out of her fingers like it had been waiting all this time. She thought about her father while she played. How he used to sit and listen to her practice for hours. How proud he looked at her recitals. How he told her she was going to be famous someday. How he had died before he could see her on a real stage. She thought about her mother, working 3 jobs back home, getting old before her time, never complaining, always telling Elena she was proud of her, even though Elena was just a maid now, not a musician. She thought about her younger sister, still in school, smart and full of dreams, dreams that Elena was helping to pay for with her maid's salary. Dreams that might actually come true because Elena had given up her own. All of that went into the music. Every sacrifice, every lonely night, every moment of feeling invisible and unimportant, every time someone treated her like she wasn't really a person. All of it poured out through her fingers and into the piano and into the air for everyone to hear. The technical passages came now. The really hard parts where the notes came so fast they blurred together. Parts where both hands had to jump all over the keyboard. Parts where one mistake could ruin everything. Elena didn't make any mistakes, her fingers were a blur of motion. Up and down the keys. Fast runs that sounded like waterfalls. Octaves that boomed like thunder. Delicate trills that sparkled like stars. She played it all perfectly. Better than perfectly. She played with passion and skill and a kind of desperate joy. People in the crowd forgot to breathe. A man who had been checking his phone put it away. A woman who had been thinking about leaving early forgot all about it. A couple who had been arguing in whispers stopped talking and just listened. The music demanded attention. Commanded it. You couldn't ignore it or think about other things while it played. You had to listen. You had to feel. Richard Morrison stood near the back of the room watching his wife's face. He had seen Victoria be cruel before. It was one of the things he liked least about her. But he had learned not to interfere. It was easier to just let her do what she wanted and stay out of it. But now he felt something he hadn't expected. Shame. Deep shame at what Victoria had tried to do. At what he had allowed by staying silent. This woman, this Elena who cleaned his house and made his meals, was extraordinary. And they had all treated her like she was nothing. The music built to a huge climax. Massive chords that used almost every key on the piano. Sound so big and powerful it seemed impossible that one person could create it. Elena's whole body worked now. Her arms, her shoulders, her back, even her feet on the pedals. Everything working together to produce this enormous, beautiful noise. Then it softened. Pulled back. Became quiet and gentle again. Like after a storm when the sun comes out. The melody returned, but different now. Changed by everything that had happened. Wiser, sadder, but still beautiful. An older man in the crowd began to cry. He didn't try to hide it. Tears ran down his face and he didn't care who saw. The music had broken something open inside him. Something that had been closed for a long time. He wasn't the only one. Several people had tears in their eyes now. Some were crying for the music itself. Some were crying for reasons they couldn't explain. Some were crying because the music reminded them of things they had lost or never had. Even people who didn't understand classical music could feel it. You didn't need to know anything about Rachmaninoff or piano concertos or musical theory. The emotion was right there in the sound, clear as daylight. Honest and raw and real, Elena moved into the final section. The ending was close now. Part of her didn't want it to end. Didn't want to come back to reality. Didn't want to stop being a musician and go back to being a maid. She wanted to live in this music forever. But the piece had to end. All music ends eventually. That's part of what makes it beautiful. Her fingers slowed. The notes came gentler and farther apart. The volume dropped to almost a whisper. She played the last few measures with infinite care, like she was saying goodbye to something precious. The final chord hung in the air. Elena let it fade naturally, not rushing it. She kept her hands on the keys even after the sound was gone, letting the silence settle. For a long moment, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The ballroom was frozen. Elena sat at the piano, her eyes closed, her hands still on the keys. She looked peaceful. More peaceful than she had looked in years. Like she had come home after a long journey. Then slowly, she opened her eyes. She lifted her hands from the keys and placed them in her lap. She took a breath. And she waited. The silence stretched on and on. 5 seconds. 10 seconds, 15, Elena's piece began to crack. Had it been bad? Had she made mistakes she didn't notice? Were people too shocked or embarrassed to react? Maybe she had made a fool of herself after all. She started to stand up, ready to apologize and run away. And then it happened. One person started clapping, just one. The older man who had been crying. He clapped slowly at first, then faster, louder. Another person joined in. Then another. Then the whole room exploded. The sound of applause was like thunder, like rain on a tin roof, like ocean waves crashing on rocks. It filled every corner of the ballroom, loud and wild and impossible to ignore. But people weren't just clapping. They were standing up. One after another, people rose to their feet. Some were still crying. Some were smiling huge smiles. Some just looked stunned, like they couldn't process what they had heard. "Brava," someone shouted. "Brava." Others picked up the call. "Brava, brava." The applause went on and on. People clapped until their hands hurt. Some whistled. Some cheered. The music professor was clapping so hard he thought he might break his fingers, but he didn't care. Elena sat at the piano, frozen in shock. She couldn't believe this was happening. She had expected laughter, maybe, or polite, confused silence, but this wave of appreciation and respect and pure joy, never. Tears filled her eyes. She tried to blink them away, but they came anyway, rolled down her cheeks and dripped onto her apron. Happy tears, grateful tears, years of sadness and loneliness washing out of her all at once. A woman pushed through the crowd toward the piano. She was around 60, wearing an elegant purple gown with kind eyes and gray hair. "My dear girl," she said, her voice shaking with emotion. "That was one of the most beautiful things I've ever heard. Where did you train?" Before Elena could answer, others crowded around. Questions flew at her from all directions. "How long have you been playing? Why aren't you performing professionally? Who was your teacher? Have you recorded anything?" Elena felt overwhelmed. Too many faces. Too many voices. Too much attention after years of being invisible. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. An old man pushed his way to the front. He was small and thin with white hair and glasses. But he carried himself with authority. People moved aside to let him through. "Please," he said in a voice that commanded respect. "Give her some space." The crowd backed up a little. The old man looked at Elena with sharp, intelligent eyes. "Young lady," he said, "I'm Marcus Chen. I conduct the Metropolitan Symphony Orchestra. I've been conducting for 40 years. I've heard thousands of pianists. And what you just did..." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "What you just did was extraordinary. World class. I need to know who you are and why you're working as a maid instead of performing in concert halls." Elena finally found her voice. It came out small and shaky. I was a student at the National Conservatory back home, but my father got sick and died. There was no money anymore, so I came here to work, to send money to my family." The old man nodded slowly. His eyes were sad but understanding. "And you gave up your music?" "I had to." "No," he said firmly. "You shouldn't have had to. Nobody with your gift should have to give it up. It's a crime against art itself." Other people murmured in agreement. A younger man stepped forward. He wore an expensive suit and had the confident air of someone used to getting what he wanted. "I'm David Park," he said. "I run a technology company. Ms. Elena, I would like to sponsor you. Pay for lessons, performances, whatever you need. That kind of talent can't be wasted cleaning houses." "I'll provide the lessons myself," said a woman with bright red hair. "I teach at the Metropolitan Academy of Music. I have a waiting list of students, but for you I'll make time." More offers came. A famous pianist offered to mentor her. A recording company representative gave her a business card. A concert hall manager invited her to perform. Elena's head spun. It was too much, too fast. An hour ago she had been collecting empty glasses. Now all these important people wanted to help her. It didn't feel real. She looked across the room and saw Victoria. Victoria stood alone now, abandoned by her guests who had all moved toward the piano. Her face was white except for 2 red spots on her cheeks. She looked like she had been slapped. Her carefully planned humiliation had turned into a triumph for the person she had tried to humiliate. Their eyes met across the crowded room. Elena felt a strange mixture of feelings. Anger, yes. Satisfaction at proving Victoria wrong. But also something like pity. Because Victoria had everything except the one thing that really mattered. She had money and a big house and expensive clothes. But she didn't have anything real. Anything true? She spent her life trying to make herself feel important by making others feel small. How sad, Elena thought. How empty that must be. She looked away from Victoria, back to the people surrounding her with their offers and questions and kindness. These strangers were giving her what her employer never had: respect, recognition, hope. Marcus Chen spoke again. "Miss Elena, I'm serious about my offer. Come play for the symphony board next week. I guarantee they'll want you to perform with us. We're always looking for soloists of your caliber." I don't have formal clothes," Elena said. "Nothing nice enough for something like that." We'll handle that, said the red-haired teacher. Don't worry about clothes or anything else. Just promise me you'll come. Elena looked at all their faces. These rich people she had been serving all night. They looked at her so differently now. Not through her. At her, seeing her. Really seeing her. Yes, she whispered. Then louder, yes, I'll come. Thank you. Thank you so much. The crowd broke into applause again. Somewhere in the back of the room, Richard Morrison watched everything unfold. He thought about the 3 years Elena had worked in his house. How he had never really looked at her or talked to her. How he had let his wife treat her badly. How this woman had been living under his roof with this incredible gift, hidden inside her like a secret treasure. And he had never known. Had never bothered to know. He felt ashamed of himself. Ashamed of Victoria. Ashamed of the whole world they lived in where people were sorted into categories. Important and unimportant. Worth seeing and invisible. He walked over to the bar and poured himself a drink. Not champagne, whiskey. He needed something strong. The party had changed. It wasn't Victoria's show anymore. People clustered around Elena, still asking questions, offering help, wanting to be part of this amazing story they would tell for years. Victoria had disappeared, slipped away to somewhere in the house. Richard knew he should probably go find her. But he didn't want to. Let her be alone with her cruelty and its consequences. Elena finally managed to stand up from the piano bench. Her legs felt shaky. The red-haired teacher put an arm around her shoulders to steady her. Are you all right, dear? Yes, Elena said. I can't believe this is happening. Believe it, Marcus Chen said with a smile. You've been given a gift, and now finally the world is going to hear it. The party went on, but it was different now. Elena was no longer the invisible maid. She sat in one of the fancy chairs that guests used, surrounded by people who wanted to talk to her. Someone brought her champagne. Someone else brought her food from the kitchen. The same tiny expensive snack she had been serving an hour ago. It felt strange. Wrong somehow. Like she was playing pretend. These weren't her people. This wasn't her world. She was still wearing her maid uniform with the white apron, but everyone treated her like she belonged with them now. Marcus Chen sat beside her, his old hands folded in his lap. Tell me about your training, he said. Every detail. I want to understand how someone develops technique like yours. Elena told him. About starting piano at age 5. About her first teacher, Mrs. Valeria, who was strict but kind. About practicing until her fingers ached. About winning her first competition at age 12. About getting accepted to the National Conservatory, which was a huge honor. I studied there for 6 years, Elena said. They taught me everything. Not just how to play notes, but how to understand music. How to feel it. How to make it mean something. It shows, Marcus said. Every note you played tonight had intention behind it. That's rare, very rare. Most pianists your age play perfectly, but without soul. You have both. Elena felt her cheeks warm at the compliment. She had gotten used to being invisible, to being nothing. Praise felt foreign. Like wearing shoes that didn't quite fit. The woman with red hair introduced herself properly. I'm Catherine Wells, she said. I've been teaching piano for 25 years. I'd be honored to work with you. Not that you need much teaching. Mostly you just need performance opportunities, places to play. I don't understand why no one discovered you before, said David Park, the tech businessman. How long have you been in this country? 8 years, and in all that time you never played for anyone? Never tried to get back into music? Elena looked down at her hands. They were rough hands now, calloused from cleaning supplies and hot water, not the soft hands of someone who spent their days at a piano. I couldn't, she said quietly. I was working all the time, and even if I had time, where would I play? You need connections to get performance opportunities. You need money for nice clothes and travel. You need so many things I didn't have. Plus, she added, even quieter, I was afraid. Afraid of what? Catherine asked gently. Afraid that I had lost it? That 8 years away from music had made me bad? That I wouldn't be able to play anymore? As long as I didn't try, I could still believe I was a good pianist. But if I tried and failed? She shrugged. It would hurt too much. Marcus nodded. He understood. But you didn't fail. You succeeded beyond anyone's expectations, including your own, I think. Elena smiled a little. I didn't know I could still do it until I started playing. My fingers just remembered. Muscle memory, Catherine said, combined with genuine talent. That's a powerful combination. They talked more. About music and technique and possible next steps. People came and went, adding their own comments and suggestions. Elena felt like she was in a dream. A good dream, but still a dream. Any moment she would wake up back in her small room alone. Across the ballroom, Victoria finally reappeared. She had fixed her makeup and put on a fresh smile, but her eyes were hard and angry. She moved through her guests, trying to take back control of her party. "Everyone having a wonderful time?" she called out with fake cheerfulness. "The buffet is still open if anyone wants more food." A few people responded politely, but most ignored her. They were still focused on Elena, on the miracle they had just witnessed, on the Cinderella story playing out in front of them. Victoria's jaw tightened. She walked over to Richard, who still stood near the bar. "This is a disaster," she hissed quietly. "Everyone's ignoring me. At my own party." Richard looked at his wife. Really looked at her. He saw the anger and embarrassment in her face, but no shame. No realization that she had done something cruel. She was only upset because it hadn't worked out the way she wanted. "Maybe you shouldn't have tried to humiliate her," Richard said. Victoria's eyes flashed. "I didn't think she could actually play." "How was I supposed to know?" "You could have talked to her sometime in the last 3 years. Asked her about her life. Treated her like a person instead of furniture." "Oh, don't you start," Victoria snapped. "You never talked to the help either." Richard couldn't argue with that. It was true. He was just as guilty. "You're right," he said. "But I'm not the one who put her on the spot in front of 100 people. Victoria made a disgusted sound and walked away. The party started to wind down around midnight. Guests began making their way to the door. But they all stopped to talk to Elena first. To tell her again how wonderful she was. To give her their contact information. To make sure she really would follow up on all the offers. Elena collected a small pile of business cards, conductors, teachers, managers, patrons, people who could help her return to music. People who saw value in her gift. Carlos appeared with a trash bag, starting to clean up. He stared at Elena sitting in the fancy chair, surrounded by rich people. "What happened?" he whispered to Mrs. Chen. Mrs. Chen smiled. "Elena played piano, and it turned out she's amazing." "Really?" Carlos looked at Elena with new eyes. "I didn't know she could play." Nobody did. As the last guest left, Marcus Chen pressed a card into Elena's hand. "My personal number," he said. "Call me tomorrow. We have much to discuss." "I will," Elena promised. "Thank you." "Thank you so much." "Don't thank me," Marcus said. "Just promise me you'll never stop playing again. The world needs your music." Elena felt tears sting her eyes again. She nodded, not trusting her voice. Finally, everyone was gone. The ballroom was empty except for Elena, Carlos, Mrs. Chen, and the mess left behind. Glasses everywhere. Plates on tables. Napkins on the floor. The usual aftermath of a party. Elena stood up. Time to clean. Time to be the maid again. But Mrs. Chen stopped her. "Not tonight," she said firmly. "Carlos and I will handle it. You go rest. But it's my job. Tonight you're not the maid," Mrs. Chen said. "Tonight you're the star. Go to bed. We'll clean up." Elena wanted to argue, but she was exhausted. The emotional roller coaster of the evening had drained her completely. She nodded and headed for the stairs. As she climbed to the 3rd floor, she could hear Victoria and Richard arguing somewhere in the house. Victoria's voice was shrill with anger. Richard's was low and tired. Elena couldn't hear the words, but she could guess what they were fighting about. She reached her small room and closed the door behind her, leaned against it and let out a long breath. The business cards were still in her hand. She looked at them. Real. This was all real. Elena walked to her bed and sat down. She looked around her tiny room. The single bed. The small dresser. The one window. This had been her whole world for 3 years. These 4 walls and the mansion below where she worked. But maybe not anymore. Maybe tomorrow or next week or next month she would have a different life. A life where she played music instead of cleaning toilets. A life where people saw her instead of looking through her. A life where she could be herself again. The thought was terrifying and exciting at the same time. Elena changed into her nightgown and climbed into bed. But she couldn't sleep. Her mind was too full. Too many thoughts spinning around. Too many possibilities. She thought about calling her mother. But it was the middle of the night back home. She would call tomorrow. Tell her everything. Her mother would cry happy tears. Would say she always knew Elena was special. Would say she was proud. Her sister would scream with excitement. Would tell all her friends. Would probably post something on social media. Elena smiled at the thought. She finally fell asleep around 3 in the morning. And for the first time in years, she dreamed about music. The next morning, Elena woke to someone knocking on her door. She sat up, confused. The sun was already high. What time was it? She looked at her clock. 10 in the morning. She had slept through breakfast time. Victoria would be furious. "Just a minute," Elena called out. She quickly pulled on her uniform and opened the door. Mrs. Chen stood there looking worried. "Victoria wants to see you in her office." Right away, Elena's stomach dropped. She knew what this was about. Victoria was going to fire her. Of course she was. Elena had embarrassed her in front of all her friends. Had stolen her spotlight. Victoria wouldn't let that go unpunished. "Okay," Elena said quietly. "I'll go now." She walked downstairs to Victoria's office on the second floor. The door was closed. Elena knocked softly. "Come in," Victoria's voice called out. Elena opened the door and stepped inside. Victoria sat behind a big desk looking at papers. She didn't look up when Elena entered. "Close the door," Victoria said. Elena did. She stood in front of the desk, hands clasped, waiting. Victoria finally looked up. Her face was cold. No fake smiles now, just anger barely controlled. "I think it's time we discuss your future here." "Yes, Mrs. Morrison." "Last night was unexpected. I had no idea you could play piano like that. You should have mentioned it when you were hired." Elena didn't point out that no one had asked about her background, that Victoria had never shown the slightest interest in who Elena was or where she came from. She just said, "I'm sorry, Mrs. Morrison." "Are you?" "Because it seems to me you enjoyed making a fool of me in front of my guests." "That wasn't my intention. You asked me to play. I played. Don't get smart with me." Victoria's voice was sharp. "You knew what I was trying to do. You could have refused. You could have played badly and let it end there. But instead you showed off, made yourself the center of attention at my party." Elena felt a spark of anger. After years of being quiet and obedient, she found courage she didn't know she had. "Mrs. Morrison, you tried to humiliate me. You put me on the spot in front of all those people. You wanted them to laugh at me. I just played the best I could." Victoria's face turned red. "How dare you speak to me like that? I am your employer." "Yes, you are. And you've been a terrible employer." The words were out before Elena could stop them, but once they started, they kept coming. "For 3 years I've worked in this house. I've cleaned your bathrooms, made your beds, cooked your food, worked 12 14-hour days. And in all that time, you've never once treated me like a human being. I'm just the maid. Just someone to order around and ignore. You don't know anything about me. My name is all you know." Victoria stood up, her hands flat on the desk. "You're fired. Pack your things and get out." Elena expected to feel scared when she heard those words. Expected to panic about losing her job and her room and her income. But instead she felt relief, like a weight lifting off her shoulders. "Fine," Elena said calmly. "I'll be gone by this afternoon. I want you gone in an hour." "Fine." Elena turned to leave. "And you won't get a reference from me," Victoria called after her. "I'll make sure no one in this city will hire you." Elena looked back at her. "I don't think I'll need a reference from you, Mrs. Morrison. I have business cards from 40 people who want to help me. I think I'll be fine." She walked out and closed the door behind her. Her heart was pounding. Had she really just said all that? Had she really stood up to Victoria Morrison? It felt good. Scary, but good. Elena went back to her room and started packing. She didn't have much. Her clothes fit in 2 suitcases. Her books and personal items fit in a box. That was it. 3 years of her life packed up in an hour. Mrs. Chen helped her carry everything downstairs. The older woman had tears in her eyes. "I'm going to miss you," she said. "You were always so kind and hardworking." "I'll miss you too," Elena said honestly. Mrs. Chen had been the only person in this house who treated her well. Carlos helped load Elena's things into a taxi. "Good luck," he said. "Go be famous or something," Elena laughed. "I'll try." She climbed into the taxi and gave the driver an address. One of Elena's friends from church, Maria, had a small apartment and had told Elena she could stay there if she ever needed to. As the taxi pulled away from the Morrison mansion, Elena looked back at it one last time. The big house where she had been so unhappy, where she had felt so small and invisible. She didn't feel sad to leave. She felt free. Elena pulled out her phone and dialed her mother's number. It rang several times before her mother answered, voice sleepy. "Elena, what's wrong? Is everything okay?" "Everything's fine, Mama, better than fine. I have so much to tell you." And Elena told her everything. About the party and Victoria's cruelty and playing the piano and all the people who wanted to help her. Her mother listened, gasping and exclaiming and crying happy tears just like Elena knew she would. "I'm so proud of you," her mother said. "Your father would be so proud," Elena cried then. "I wish he could have seen it. He did, Mija. He was there. I know he was." They talked for almost an hour. Her mother asked questions and Elena answered them all. Finally, Elena said, "I have to go, Mama. I need to call some of these people. Start figuring out what happens next. Call me again soon. I love you. I love you too." Elena hung up and looked at the business cards in her lap. So many possibilities. So many new paths opening up. It was overwhelming. She decided to start with Marcus Chen. He had been the kindest and seemed the most genuine. Elena dialed his number. He answered on the second ring. "Marcus Chen. Mr. Chen. This is Elena Rodriguez. From last night?" "Elena, I've been hoping you'd call. How are you feeling today?" "Good, a little overwhelmed. I actually just got fired from my job at the Morrison house." "Fired? Because of last night?" "Yes, Mrs. Morrison was very angry." There was a pause. Then Marcus said, "Well then, it's a good thing I'm about to offer you a job." Elena's breath caught. "What?" "I've been thinking about this all morning. The symphony needs a resident pianist, someone who can perform solo pieces, accompany singers, play in the orchestra when needed. The job includes a salary, an apartment, and access to practice rooms. Are you interested?" Elena couldn't speak for a moment. She just sat in the back of the taxi, tears running down her face, nodding even though Marcus couldn't see her. "Elena, are you there?" "Yes," she managed to say. "Yes, I'm here. And yes, I'm very interested." "Wonderful. Can you come to my office tomorrow morning? We'll work out all the details." "Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. Don't thank me. You earned this with your talent. I'll see you tomorrow at 10. Elena hung up and let herself cry. Happy tears, relieved tears, grateful tears. The taxi driver glanced at her in the mirror, concerned. "I'm okay," Elena told him. "I'm better than okay. I'm happy." The driver smiled and turned his attention back to the road. Elena looked out the window at the city passing by. Somewhere out there was her new life, her real life, the life she was supposed to have been living all along. She had lost 8 years. But she had tonight and tomorrow and all the days after that. She was Elena Rodriguez, and she was a pianist. The taxi dropped Elena at Maria's apartment building. It was in an older part of the city, where the buildings had character but the paint was peeling. Maria lived on the 4th floor. There was no elevator. Elena carried her suitcases up the stairs one trip at a time. By the time she reached the top, she was breathing hard and sweating. Maria opened the door before Elena could knock. She was a small woman, barely 5 feet tall, with dark curly hair and bright eyes. She had worked with Elena at a hotel years ago, before Elena went to work for the Morrisons. They had stayed friends, meeting for coffee once a month. "Elena," Maria pulled her into a tight hug. Come in, come in. I saw your message." "What happened?" Elena stepped into the small apartment. It was cramped but clean. 1 bedroom, a tiny kitchen, a living room with a couch that had seen better days. But it felt warm, lived in, real, not like the cold perfection of the Morrison mansion. "I got fired," Elena said. Then she smiled. "But I also got a job with the symphony orchestra." Maria's mouth dropped open. "What? Sit down. Tell me everything. And I mean everything." They sat on the old couch and Elena told the whole story. Victoria's party, the humiliation attempt, the performance, all the offers. Getting fired. Marcus Chen's phone call. Maria listened with wide eyes, interrupting with gasps and exclamations. "This is like a movie," Maria said when Elena finished. "A real-life fairy tale." "It doesn't feel real yet," Elena admitted. "I keep thinking I'll wake up." "Well, you better believe it's real because tomorrow you have a meeting with a symphony conductor." Maria jumped up. We need to find you something nice to wear. Come look in my closet. They spent the next hour going through Maria's clothes. Most things didn't fit right. Maria was shorter and rounder than Elena, but they found a simple blue dress that worked. A little tight in the shoulders, but acceptable. Maria also had a pair of black shoes with small heels that were only slightly too big. Perfect, Maria declared. You look professional and put together. Elena looked at herself in Maria's bedroom mirror. She did look different. Not like a maid anymore. Like someone who had somewhere important to be. Someone who mattered. That evening, Maria made dinner. Rice and beans and chicken, simple but delicious. They ate on the couch because Maria didn't have a dining table. The apartment was too small for one. You can stay here as long as you need, Maria said. The couch pulls out into a bed. It's not comfortable, but it's yours. Thank you, Elena said. I'll only need it for a few days, I think. Mr. Chen said the job comes with an apartment. An apartment? Maria shook her head in amazement. Everything is changing so fast for you. I know. It's scary, but good scary, right? Elena thought about it. Yes, good scary. That night, Elena slept on Maria's pull-out couch. It was lumpy and the springs poked through in places. But Elena slept better than she had in years. She felt safe, hopeful, like her life was finally going in the right direction. She woke early the next morning, too nervous to sleep more. The meeting with Marcus Chen was at 10. Elena showered and put on Maria's blue dress. She tried to do something nice with her hair, but it wouldn't cooperate. Finally, she just pulled it back in a simple bun. You look great, Maria said, handing her coffee and toast. Go knock them dead. The symphony office was downtown in a beautiful old building. Elena took the bus there, too nervous to sit still. She arrived 15 minutes early and sat in the lobby, watching people come and go. Musicians carrying instrument cases, office workers with briefcases, everyone looking busy and important. At exactly 10 o'clock, a young woman appeared. Elena Rodriguez? Mr. Chen is ready to see you. Elena followed her down a hallway lined with photographs of the orchestra through the years, old black and white pictures from the 1920s, color photos from more recent decades, a history of music in this city. Marcus Chen's office was large and cluttered, books and papers everywhere, a piano in the corner, pictures of famous musicians on the walls. Marcus himself sat behind a desk covered in sheet music. Elena. He stood up and shook her hand warmly. Please sit. Coffee? Tea? No, thank you. I'm fine. Nervous? Very, Marcus smiled. Don't be. We're all friends here. Let me tell you about the position. He explained everything in detail. The symphony needed a resident pianist who could handle multiple roles. Solo performances, of course, but also playing piano parts in larger orchestral pieces, accompanying guest soloists, teaching workshops, occasionally playing for educational programs at schools. The salary is $45,000 a year to start, Marcus said. It's not a fortune, but it's decent. Plus health insurance and 2 weeks vacation. And as I mentioned, an apartment. We own a building near the concert hall. Small units, but nice. You'd have your own place. Elena's head spun. $45,000. She currently made $18,000 at the Morrison house. This was more than double. And an apartment. Her own apartment. The position would start in 2 weeks, Marcus continued. That gives you time to get settled. We'd want you to perform in 3 weeks at our autumn concert series. Does that timeline work for you? Yes, Elena said quickly. Yes, absolutely. Excellent. Now, I need to be honest with you. The board of directors needs to approve this hire. They already loved what they heard at the party, but they'll want to hear you play formally. Can you come back tomorrow? We'll do a proper audition. Just a formality, really, but we need to follow procedures. Of course. What should I prepare? Play whatever you want. Something that shows your technical skill and your emotional depth. The Rachmaninoff would work perfectly, but if you'd prefer something else, that's fine too. I'll play the Rachmaninoff, Elena said. It had worked once. Maybe it would work again. They talked for another hour. About music and expectations and what her day-to-day life would look like. Marcus was easy to talk to. He didn't treat her like she was beneath him, even though he was famous and important and she was nobody. Finally, Marcus stood up. I have rehearsal in a few minutes, but I'll see you tomorrow at 2 o'clock. The board will be there, along with some of our orchestra members. There will be about 20 people total. Don't let that intimidate you. 20 people. Elena's stomach fluttered. but she nodded. I'll be ready. I know you will be. Elena left the building walking on air. She had an audition tomorrow. A real audition with a real orchestra. This was happening. This was really happening. She wanted to practice. Needed to practice. But where? She couldn't use Maria's apartment. The neighbors would complain. And she didn't have access to a piano anymore. Then Elena remembered Catherine Wells, the red-haired piano teacher from the party. She had given Elena her card and told her to call any time. Elena pulled out the card and dialed. Catherine answered immediately. Elena, I was hoping to hear from you. Ms. Wells, I have an audition tomorrow with the symphony. I need to practice, but I don't have access to a piano. I know this is asking a lot, but... Say no more, Catherine interrupted. Come to my studio. You can practice as long as you need. I'm here until 8 tonight. Thank you so much. Catherine gave Elena her address. It was across town, but Elena didn't care. She took 2 buses to get there, arriving just before noon. The studio was in a converted warehouse in the Arts District. High ceilings and big windows. 5 pianos of different sizes scattered around the large open space. The walls were covered in soundproofing material. Catherine greeted Elena with a hug. Use any piano you want. The Steinway in the corner is my favorite. I have students coming and going all afternoon, but don't worry about them. Just focus on your practice. Elena sat at the Steinway and ran her hands over the keys. It was a beautiful instrument. Perfectly tuned. Responsive to the slightest touch. Nothing like the Morrison's piano, which was more decoration than instrument. She started slowly, warming up her fingers with scales and arpeggios. It had been 2 days since she played at the party. 2 days since she had touched a piano before that in years. She needed to make sure her fingers remembered everything. Catherine went back to teaching a young boy at another piano. Elena tuned her out and focused on her own playing. After 20 minutes of warm-up exercises, she started the Rachmaninoff. It felt different playing it today. More technical, less emotional. At the party, she had been caught up in the moment, feeling everything. Today, she needed to make sure every note was perfect, every phrase properly shaped, every dynamic exactly right. She played through the piece 3 times, stopping occasionally to work on difficult sections, repeating them over and over until they were smooth. By the 3rd time through, she felt confident. She could do this. She could play it perfectly for the audition. Students came and went throughout the afternoon. Some stopped to listen to Elena for a moment. One teenage girl stood watching for a full 10 minutes, her mouth open in awe. Catherine eventually shooed her away so Elena could concentrate. At 6 o'clock, Catherine brought Elena a sandwich and a bottle of water. You need to eat, she said firmly. Can't play on an empty stomach. Elena realized she was starving. She hadn't eaten since Maria's toast that morning. She ate the sandwich gratefully. You sound wonderful, Catherine said. Better than at the party, even. More controlled. I was pretty emotional at the party, Elena admitted. That emotion was beautiful. Don't lose it tomorrow. The board needs to hear both things, the technical perfection and the feeling. I'll try. You'll succeed, I have no doubts. Elena practiced for 2 more hours. By 8 o'clock, her back ached and her fingers were tired. But she felt ready. As ready as she could be. Catherine locked up the studio and walked Elena to the bus stop. Call me after the audition tomorrow, she said. I'll be thinking about you. I will. Thank you again for everything. My pleasure. You're going to be a star, Elena. I can feel it. Elena rode the bus back to Maria's apartment. Her friend was waiting with dinner and a million questions. Elena answered them all while they ate. Then she went to bed early. She needed rest for tomorrow, but sleep didn't come easily. Elena lay on the lumpy pull-out couch staring at the ceiling, running through the Rachmaninoff in her head. Imagining the audition, what the board members would look like, what questions they might ask. What would happen if she messed up? No, she wouldn't mess up. She couldn't. This was her chance. Maybe her only chance. She had to be perfect. Finally, around midnight, she fell into a restless sleep. The next morning, Elena woke to find Maria already gone to work. There was a note on the kitchen counter. Good luck today. You're going to be amazing. Call me after! Elena made coffee and forced herself to eat breakfast even though she had no appetite. She put on Maria's blue dress again, applied a little makeup, brushed her hair until it shone, looked at herself in the mirror. You can do this, she told her reflection. You've been playing this piece since you were 20 years old. You know every note. You can do this. She arrived at the Symphony Building at 1:30, 30 minutes early. The same young woman from yesterday met her in the lobby. The audition is in the concert hall. I'll take you there. They walked through a maze of corridors. Elena heard music coming from practice rooms. Violins, cellos, horns, the sound of an orchestra preparing. It was beautiful. The concert hall was breathtaking. Rows and rows of red velvet seats rising up from the stage. Balconies on 3 sides. Ornate decorations on the ceiling. And in the center of the stage, a single piano. About 20 people sat in the first few rows. Elena recognized Marcus Chen. He waved at her and smiled. The others were strangers. Some old, some young, some in business clothes, some more casual. These were the people who would decide her fate. Ms. Rodriguez, Marcus said, standing up. Welcome. Whenever you're ready, you may begin. Elena walked across the stage. Her footsteps echoed in the huge space. She sat at the piano and adjusted the bench. Took a deep breath. Let it out slowly. She placed her hands on the keys. The opening notes of the Rachmaninoff filled the concert hall. The acoustics here were incredible. Every sound was clear and perfect. Better than at the Morrison house. Better even than Catherine's studio. Elena let herself fall into the music again. Let it carry her away. But this time she stayed in control. She was aware of every note, every phrase, every tiny detail. Technical perfection combined with emotional truth. She played the big dramatic sections with power. The quiet sections with delicate beauty. The fast sections with precision. Every note exactly where it should be. Exactly how it should sound. The 20 people in the audience sat perfectly still. Some leaned forward. Some had their eyes closed. All of them listened with complete attention. Elena reached the final section. The gentle ending. The last few notes that faded into silence. She played them with infinite care. Let the sound die away naturally. Silence, then applause. Not wild like at the party, but steady and warm. Respectful applause from people who knew music. Who understood what they had just heard. Marcus stood up. Thank you, Ms. Rodriguez, that was extraordinary. Would you mind waiting outside while we discuss? Of course. Elena left the stage and went to sit in the hallway. Her hands were shaking now that it was over. Had she done well enough? What if they decided she wasn't good enough? What if this was all a mistake? She waited for 20 minutes. It felt like 20 hours. Finally, the door opened. Marcus came out, followed by several of the board members. They were all smiling. Elena, Marcus said, on behalf of the Metropolitan Symphony Orchestra, I'm pleased to officially offer you the position of resident pianist. Elena's knees went weak. Really? Really? The vote was unanimous. You're exactly what we've been looking for. One of the board members, an older woman with white hair, stepped forward. My dear, I've been with this orchestra for 30 years. I've heard hundreds of auditions. That was one of the finest I've ever witnessed. Welcome to the family. Others came forward to shake her hand and offer congratulations. Elena felt tears in her eyes again. She seemed to be crying a lot lately. Happy tears, but still. Marcus walked her back to his office to sign papers and go over details. The apartment would be ready in a week. In the meantime, she could stay where she was. Her first performance would be 3 weeks from now. She would play 3 solo pieces as part of the autumn concert series. The concert is already sold out, Marcus mentioned casually. Word has spread about you. People are curious. Sold out. Elena felt dizzy. Don't worry. You'll do wonderfully. Just play like you did today and at the party. That's all you need to do. Elena left the Symphony Building in a daze. She had a job. A real job doing what she loved. An apartment. A chance to perform. Everything she had dreamed about 8 years ago was finally coming true.
She called Maria from a payphone on the street.
Her friend screamed so loud that Elena had to hold the phone away from her ear. I knew it. I knew they'd hire you. We need to celebrate. I don't have money for celebrating. Then we'll celebrate at home. I'll buy a bottle of cheap wine and we'll toast your success. That night, Elena and Maria sat on the old couch, drinking wine from coffee mugs because Maria didn't own wine glasses. They talked and laughed and made plans for Elena's future. What's the first thing you'll do with your new salary? Maria asked. Send money to my mother and sister, Elena said immediately. More than I've been sending. Enough so my mother can stop working so much. And after that, save for a piano. A good one, so I can practice at home instead of always borrowing studios. They talked until late. Maria finally fell asleep on the couch. Elena covered her with a blanket and went to the pull-out bed. She lay there in the dark, thinking about everything that had happened in just 3 days. 3 days ago, she was invisible. A maid that nobody saw. Now she had a real job. People wanted to hear her play. Her life had value again. She thought about Victoria Morrison. Wondered if Victoria knew yet about Elena's new position. Wondered if she cared. Probably not. Victoria would just hire another maid and forget Elena ever existed. But Elena wouldn't forget. She would remember this lesson. That cruelty sometimes backfires. That trying to make someone else look small can reveal your own emptiness. That gifts can't be hidden forever. She would remember, and she would be kind. When she was famous someday, if she was famous, she would treat everyone with respect. The janitors and the ushers and the volunteers. Everyone who made music possible but didn't stand on stage. She would remember where she came from. 3 weeks passed in a blur. Elena moved into her new apartment. It was small, just 1 bedroom and a tiny kitchen, but it was hers. Her own space. After years of living in someone else's house, doing someone else's work, it felt like a palace. The apartment came furnished with basic things. A bed, a table, 2 chairs, a couch. Everything simple but new and clean. Elena stood in the middle of her living room on the first day and just turned in circles, taking it all in. This was home now. Really home. The symphony gave her a key to the practice rooms. She could use them anytime. Elena went every day, practiced for hours. Not just the Rachmaninoff, but other pieces too. Mozart and Beethoven and Chopin. Building her repertoire. Getting ready for the concert. Marcus introduced her to the other musicians in the orchestra. They were kind and welcoming. The violinists invited her to lunch. The cellists shared jokes with her during rehearsals. She wasn't invisible here. She was one of them. Catherine Wells came by several times to listen to Elena practice and offer suggestions. Small things. A slight change in tempo here, a different approach to a difficult passage there. Catherine was a good teacher, patient and encouraging. "You're going to be nervous on concert night," Catherine said one day. "That's normal. Everyone gets nervous. But remember, nerves can be good. They keep you sharp. Just channel that energy into the music." Elena also started teaching. Just a few students at first, children mostly, learning piano for the first time. It was harder than she expected. Teaching required different skills than playing. But she enjoyed it. Liked seeing young faces light up when they got something right. The money was good. Better than good. Elena sent half her salary home to her mother every month. Her mother cried when she received the first payment. "It's too much," she said on the phone. "You need to save for yourself." "Mama, I have everything I need." "Let me do this," her mother finally agreed. She used the money to pay off debts, to buy new clothes for Elena's sister, to fix things around the house that had been broken for years. Little by little, life got easier for them back home. Elena's sister, Carmen, was so proud she told everyone. All her friends at school, her teachers, even strangers on the bus. "My sister plays piano at the symphony," she would say. "She's going to be famous." Elena hoped Carmen was right. But mostly she just hoped she wouldn't mess up at the concert. The days counted down. 3 weeks became 2 weeks. 2 weeks became 1 week. 1 week became 3 days. Then 2 days. Then tomorrow. The night before the concert, Elena couldn't sleep. She lay in her bed staring at the ceiling, running through the music in her head over and over. What if she forgot the notes? What if her hands shook too much? What if people expected too much and she disappointed them? She got up at 2 in the morning and made tea, sat at her small kitchen table and tried to calm down. This was ridiculous. She had played this music 100 times in the last 3 weeks. She knew it inside and out. She would be fine, but the fear wouldn't go away. Finally, at 3 in the morning, Elena called Catherine. She felt bad waking her teacher so late, but she needed to talk to someone. Catherine answered on the 3rd ring, voice thick with sleep. "Elena, what's wrong?" "I'm sorry for calling so late. I'm so nervous about tomorrow." "What if I can't do it?" Catherine was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Elena, listen to me. You've already done the hard part. You've learned the music. You've practiced until it's perfect. Now you just have to share it. That's all a performance is, sharing what you know with people who want to hear it. But what if I mess up? Then you keep playing. Every musician makes mistakes. The good ones just don't let it stop them. But you won't mess up. I've heard you play. You're ready? They talked for 20 minutes. Catherine told stories about her own performances, about times she messed up and times she succeeded, about how nerves were part of being a musician, about how the fear never really went away, you just learned to live with it. Thank you, Elena said finally. I feel better now. Good, now go to sleep. You need rest. Elena went back to bed and finally fell asleep around 4. She woke at 9, groggy but less nervous. Today was the day. Concert day. She made breakfast but barely ate, took a long shower, washed her hair and dried it carefully. She wanted to look nice tonight, professional, like she belonged on that stage. Maria came over at noon with a dress, a real concert dress, black and elegant with long sleeves and a full skirt. I borrowed it from my cousin, Maria explained. She's a singer. She said you could use it. Elena put it on. It fit perfectly. She looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman looking back. She looked like a real pianist, a professional. You're beautiful, Maria said, tears in her eyes. I'm so proud of you. The concert started at 7. Elena arrived at the hall at 4 for final preparations and sound check. The backstage area was busy with musicians warming up, stage crew moving equipment, staff checking last-minute details. Marcus found Elena in her dressing room. She was pacing back and forth, unable to sit still. How are you feeling? He asked. Terrified, he laughed. Good, that means you care. Let me tell you something. I've been conducting for 40 years. I still get nervous before every concert. But the moment the music starts, the fear disappears. You'll see. At 6:30, people started arriving. Elena peeked through the curtain and watched the hall fill up. Every seat taken. People standing in the back. More people than she had ever played for before. She saw some familiar faces. Catherine sitting in the 3rd row. David Park, the tech businessman who had offered to sponsor her. Some of the other guests from Victoria's party. They had all come to hear her play. Her heart pounded so hard she thought it might break through her chest. At 6:55, a stagehand came to get her. 5 minutes, Ms. Rodriguez. Elena took deep breaths. In and out. In and out. She could do this. She had played this music 1,000 times. She knew every note. At 7 o'clock exactly, the lights dimmed. The audience grew quiet. Marcus walked out on stage and spoke into a microphone. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our autumn concert series. Tonight we have something very special for you. Many of you heard about a remarkable performance at a private event 3 weeks ago. A performance that has become something of a legend in our city. Tonight you'll have the chance to hear it for yourselves. Please welcome our new resident pianist, Elena Rodriguez. The audience applauded. Elena walked out from the wings. The stage lights were bright, almost blinding. She could barely see the audience beyond the first few rows, but she could feel them. Hundreds of people watching her, waiting to hear what she could do. Elena walked to the piano, sat down, adjusted the bench, placed her hands on the keys, and suddenly the fear was gone, just like Marcus said it would be. The moment her fingers touched the keys, everything else disappeared. There was only the music. She played the opening notes of the Rachmaninoff, soft and gentle, building slowly. The concert hall's acoustics were even better than during the audition. Every note was crystal clear, perfect. Elena lost herself in the performance. This time she wasn't playing for a cruel hostess who wanted to embarrass her. She wasn't playing to prove anything to anyone. She was playing because this was what she was meant to do. This was who she was. The music flowed out of her like water from a spring, natural and pure. She played the dramatic sections with power, the tender sections with delicacy, the fast sections with precision. Everything came together perfectly. She could feel the audience with her, breathing with her, following every phrase, every emotion. They were on this journey together. The big climax came. The huge, powerful chords that used almost every key on the piano. Elena played them with all her strength, all her passion, all her joy at being here, doing this, living her dream. Then the music softened, drew back, became gentle again for the ending. The final notes were like whispers, like saying goodbye to someone you love. Elena played the last chord and let it fade into silence. She took her hands off the keys and sat still. The silence lasted for a long moment. Then the applause started. But this wasn't polite applause. This was thunder. The audience leapt to their feet as one, clapping, cheering, shouting. The sound was deafening. Elena stood up and turned to face them. The lights were still bright. She still couldn't see most of the faces, but she could feel their appreciation, their joy, their recognition of what she had shared with them. She bowed. The applause grew louder. People were crying. She could see tears on faces in the first few rows. Catherine was sobbing openly. Even Marcus was wiping his eyes. Elena bowed again. And again. The applause went on and on. 5 minutes, 6 minutes. People didn't want to stop clapping. Finally, Marcus came out on stage. He gestured for quiet. It took a while for the audience to settle down. Ms. Rodriguez will be playing 2 more pieces after intermission, Marcus announced. But I think we all need a moment to recover from what we just heard. More applause. Elena walked off stage on shaky legs. As soon as she was in the wings, her knees buckled. A stagehand caught her arm. Are you okay? Yes, Elena said. I can't believe that just happened. You were incredible. I worked here for 15 years and I've never heard anything like that. During intermission, Elena stayed in her dressing room. She needed quiet, needed to center herself before the second half. She had 2 more pieces to play, a Mozart sonata and a Chopin nocturne, shorter pieces but no less important. Someone knocked on the door. 5 minutes to places. Elena stood up, smoothed her dress, and walked back to the stage. The second half went just as well as the first. The Mozart was light and joyful. The Chopin was dark and romantic. Elena played both with the same passion and precision she had brought to the Rachmaninoff. When she finished, the audience gave her another standing ovation. Flowers were brought on stage. Roses and lilies and orchids. So many flowers that Elena couldn't carry them all. Backstage after the concert, people crowded around her. Musicians from the orchestra congratulating her. Board members shaking her hand. Reporters asking for interviews. It was overwhelming. Marcus rescued her. That's enough for tonight, he said firmly. Ms. Rodriguez needs rest. You can schedule interviews through the office. He walked Elena to a quiet room away from the crowd. You did it, he said simply. You were magnificent. Thank you. For everything. For giving me this chance. You earned it, and this is just the beginning, Elena. Mark my words, you're going to have a long and brilliant career. Elena went home that night exhausted but happy. Maria was waiting at her apartment with champagne and a store-bought cake. They celebrated until midnight, laughing and talking and reliving every moment of the concert. The next morning, Elena woke to find her phone ringing nonstop. Calls from reporters, from other orchestras, from concert halls wanting to book her, from agents offering representation. The local newspaper had a review of the concert on the front page of the arts section. The headline read, Unknown Pianist Stuns Symphony Audience. The review was glowing. It called her performance transcendent and career-making. Someone had posted a video of her playing at Victoria's party. It had gone viral online. Millions of views, thousands of comments, people from all over the world praising her playing, asking who she was, where they could hear more. Elena sat at her kitchen table, reading comments on her phone, tears streaming down her face. People loved her music. People she would never meet, in countries she had never visited, were moved by what she had shared. This was what her father had dreamed for her. This was what she had given up 8 years ago. And now, miraculously, impossibly, it had come back to her. The phone rang again. Elena answered it without looking at the number. Elena Rodriguez? An unfamiliar voice asked. Yes? This is Jennifer Walsh from the Steinway Hall in New York. We'd like to book you for a solo recital next spring. Would you be interested? Elena's hand shook. Steinway Hall. One of the most prestigious concert venues in the world. Yes, she managed to say. Yes, I would be very interested. More offers came. A recording company wanted to make an album. A documentary filmmaker wanted to tell her story. A music festival in Europe wanted her to perform. Elena said yes to some offers and no to others. She was careful not to overcommit. Marcus helped her navigate the sudden attention, acting as an advisor until she could hire a proper agent. Life became busy, very busy. Concerts every few weeks, teaching students during the day, practicing in every spare moment. But Elena loved it. every exhausting, overwhelming minute of it. 6 months after the concert, Elena was able to buy a piano for her apartment, a beautiful upright that fit perfectly in her living room. Now she could practice at home whenever she wanted. Morning, noon, or night, she also sent enough money home for her mother to retire. "You've worked enough, Mama," Elena said on the phone. "Rest now." "Enjoy life," her mother cried. "You're such a good daughter. Your father would be so proud." "I hope so." Elena's sister Carmen came to visit that summer. She stayed for 2 weeks, attending Elena's concerts and exploring the city. On Carmen's last night, they sat in Elena's apartment eating ice cream. "Do you ever think about her?" Carmen asked. "That rich woman who tried to embarrass you?" Elena had thought about Victoria Morrison a few times, wondered what she thought about Elena's success, whether she felt any regret for how she had treated her. "Sometimes," Elena admitted, "but not in a mean way. I'm actually grateful to her in a strange way." "Grateful? Why?" "Because if she hadn't put me on the spot that night, none of this would have happened. I would still be cleaning houses, still hiding my music. She forced me to stop hiding. She meant it as cruelty, but it turned into a gift." Carmen thought about that. "You're a better person than me." "I would hate her," Elena smiled. "Hate takes too much energy. I'd rather spend my energy on music." A year after the concert, Elena performed at Carnegie Hall in New York. It was one of the most prestigious venues in the world. The concert was sold out months in advance. People flew in from other countries to hear her play. Marcus came to New York for the performance. So did Catherine and Maria and many of the musicians from the Metropolitan Symphony. Even David Park flew in on his private jet. Backstage before the concert, Elena felt the old nervousness return. This was Carnegie Hall, the stage where legends had performed. What if she wasn't good enough? But then she remembered what Catherine had told her a year ago. She had already done the hard part, learned the music, practiced until it was perfect. Now she just had to share it. Elena walked out on stage to thunderous applause. She sat at the piano, placed her hands on the keys, and played. The performance was magical, even better than at the Metropolitan Symphony. Elena poured everything into the music, all her joy and gratitude for this second chance at her dream, all her love for music that had sustained her through the hard years, all her hope for the future. When she finished, the audience erupted. The ovation lasted 15 minutes. Flowers covered the stage. People in the balconies threw roses. Elena bowed until her back ached, smiling so hard her face hurt. That night, lying in her hotel room, Elena called her mother. It was late, but her mother would want to know how it went. "Mama, I played at Carnegie Hall tonight." Her mother made a sound between a laugh and a sob. "Your father is watching from heaven." "I know he is. He's so proud of you, Mija. We're all so proud." I wish he could have seen it. He did see it, I'm sure of it. They talked until Elena couldn't keep her eyes open anymore. When she finally hung up, she lay in the dark, thinking about the journey that had brought her here. From a conservatory student with dreams, to a maid cleaning toilets, to a concert pianist performing at Carnegie Hall. It seemed impossible. Like a fairy tale, but it was real. It had happened. And it had all started with a cruel woman trying to humiliate her at a party. Elena smiled in the dark. Life was strange sometimes. The moments that seemed like endings were actually beginnings. The moments of deepest humiliation could become moments of greatest triumph. You just had to keep going, keep believing, keep being true to who you were. 2 years after that night at Victoria's party, Elena received an envelope in the mail. Expensive paper, formal handwriting. She opened it, curious. It was an invitation to a charity gala from Victoria Morrison. Elena stared at it for a long moment. Was this a joke? Why would Victoria invite her? She called Marcus to ask his advice. "Should I go?" Marcus was quiet, thinking. "That depends. Do you want to go?" "I don't know. Part of me is curious. Part of me never wants to see her again." "Then don't go. You don't owe her anything." But Elena kept thinking about it. About closure. About showing Victoria that she held no grudges. About proving to herself that she had truly moved past that night. She decided to go. Elena bought a beautiful gown for the occasion. Emerald green silk that made her look elegant and confident. She hired a car to take her to the Morrison mansion. This time she would arrive at the front door, not the service entrance. The mansion looked the same as she remembered. Big and cold and perfect,